Morning and welcome to Decaf. I have I have this really girly coffee mug that I haven't showed you, Mark. And the one thing that I don't like about it is this metallic finish handle. If you put it in the microwave to reheat coffee, because I have to reheat my coffee
Oh
all the time,
yeah.
it like really pops really loud. I learned that the hard way. So
It
I'm
also
drinking.
looks weird. I feel like yellow looks weird with gold.
I know, but I
And
love
it,
it.
oh no, I mean it's fine. I'm saying that. So, but yeah,
It's a little odd, but it's super girly and it says like, you got this, you're amazing. Anyway, I love this
unfortunately,
mug and I'm currently drinking mildly room temperature coffee because I can't put it in the microwave to reheat it
you
because
have to have just like a heating mug so you can put it in and then pour it right back into the mug you like.
I know I like redid our whole office space in here. We've got the Peloton over there, the door to get out to the cars right here, and I have a little pad thing that heats your coffee cup up, and I just haven't brought it in here yet. So I need to really get my crap together with this whole office space and doing that. So I'm really excited to talk about this first case or this first topic that we're going to talk about, because I'm a Supreme Court nerd. I love reading the opinions as they come down. And just this morning, the Supreme Court sided with a cheerleader. And, cheerleaders hold a special place in my heart as a former cheerleader and coach. I, I'll first of all, I will say that teenagers using ugly language is just very unbecoming of a young lady. But a school should not be able to punish her for using ugly language on her Snapchat. And the Supreme Court agreed. I don't know how the school doubled down to the extent that they did to get a case like this all the way to the Supreme Court. I would feel like, and I don't know how this works necessarily, but if I was a school, I would be like, this definitely is a First Amendment violation. But they doubled down and stuck to their guns all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court kind of slapped them on the wrist a little bit and said, you can't punish a cheerleader for saying ugly things about the school on her Snapchat. You can't punish her in the school for what she does on her personal time in her Snapchat.
And it wasn't even ugly. I mean, it wasn't great language. She said F the school, F the cheerleading team. That was it. I mean, it wasn't like she was like,
Yeah.
Insulting different people. I mean, she just said F this and like, which
Right.
seems insane that you could be. Also, as a weird story, I got really mad about this, but I got suspended in 7th grade when remember when you used to have AIM, like the instant messenger, or are you too young for that? On my profile, I put Mrs. Wise is the devil, haha, because I didn't like our art teacher. And I got suspended for that on my personal thing. And it reminds me of this.
You could have sued all the way to
My
the
dad actually, I think, said like, "Oh, we might sue you." Yeah, they suspended me 2 days, and I feel like it just wasn't worth it. But like, that is very similar to that. I mean, outside, it wasn't like I didn't threaten anyone. I hated my art teacher. She was the worst, and I said she was the devil. Ha ha. So I didn't actually mean it, and yeah, and they suspended me for it.
That is wild. I mean,
So I empathize with this cheerleader.
I went to a private school and a girl in my class said that she wanted to stab another girl in our class while we were on like an overnight field trip and she got sent home. I feel like that's a little different than just like saying ugly language. But if you've spent time around any high school kids, like when I was coaching cheerleading, my girls had mouths on them. Like they said some not becoming of a lady things. And I mean, they had to run when they said them around me, but I wasn't going to kick them off the squad or anything like that. And it was also a private school. Like a school shouldn't punish a student for doing that on their free time. So I'm glad.
And it was just free speech violation that she said F this, F this. Did they suspended her or did they expel her?
I actually don't know. I
Yeah,
just
well,
know.
they did something bad to her, but like it basically said like they can have free speech outside of there. She didn't threaten anyone. She didn't like it wasn't like she put
Yeah,
something in either. She said F this.
she wasn't like at a cheerleading practice or anything. She said it on her personal Snapchat. When my girl said ugly things at practice, that's when you get kind of punished a little bit. But she was on Snapchat. Like that's not, you can't do that. And so I thought
Well,
it was
it's dumb. And I mean, just I feel like when it comes down to it, I think schools, people generally should kind of be more on the side of free speech than they are like authoritarian. Even if you're like, I don't like that. It's like, well, can we do this? They should really think about that because otherwise they can. I mean, this is an embarrassing moment for this school that not only did they do this, but like they didn't back down of like suspending her. That's insane.
I know, I totally agree. And speaking of schools and overlying parent organizations being dumb, let's have a moment. Since we're not going to talk about any sporting events necessarily today, except for I would like to talk about John Rahm, but we can push that off a little bit. Um, let's slap around the NCAA a little bit because
The Supreme Court already did. So
I know, but I want to do it too.
Yeah.
And I'll never be a Supreme Court justice, so this is my opportunity to shine. every single thing that Justice Kavanaugh said in his opinion that on kind of stripping some of the NCAA's power away from them was incredible. So what happened was the NCAA has all these rules that try to basically restrict competition between schools, and they have a cap.
Preserve amateurism is what it's called.
Yes, preserve amateurism, aka strip competition away. And they have all of these rules that say that a school can't offer education related benefits like money and things like that, scholarships, for more than it costs to attend the school. And so that leaves a lot of student athletes with not having a lot. And so Justice Kavanaugh said, and it was incredible. If you haven't read it, you should read it. He basically said that these student athletes at places like Alabama and places that have really successful athletic programs bring so much money into the institutions. And now all that money goes to the college presidents or goes to trustees, goes to building new facilities, new academic buildings, and it doesn't go to them, and they're the ones that are bringing it in. And so the NCAA was basically violating antitrust law by not letting there be competition between the schools and allowing them to provide education related benefits to these student athletes who are bringing in millions of dollars to the schools. It was insane. And so I was really, really impressed with not only that Gorsuch wrote the additional opinion, but Kavanaugh apparently had a bone to pick with the NCAA as well and wrote a concurring opinion.
So I'm not, and I guess I don't completely understand the legal aspects of it, but I do think the antitrust thing was based on like that there essentially couldn't be another organization. Like there couldn't be any competitor as another organization, the NCAA, because of what they do. And not necessarily between schools, but like the one thing that I don't even know how I feel about like students getting paid or not, but I know the NCAA is the biggest trash organization in the world. And anytime the Supreme Court rules 9-0, you know you did something wrong. This wasn't like it was like it was 9-0. And I know that one of the arguments is like, well, the schools take out insurance on these people. So basically they are acting as if they were on their payrolls, but they're not. So like if schools can take out insurance, if you get hurt on them. So it's just, I don't necessarily know the wide range of things. I know that what we looked at so that they can now not pay students. They can give students money above the cost of what it costs to attend there, but only for educational purposes. So I don't know if that includes tutoring, housing, or they can just raise that. But the NCAA is just I can't wait till the NCAA falls apart. It is a garbage organization. They all make so much money while at the same time, like they restrict people's chance to actually earn a living. You're talking about a right to earn a living act. The NCAA should deal with it because it's something they don't pay them. NCAA football, you have to play for 2 years. You can't go from high school to the pros. If you're giving them a choice, that's one thing, but they're not. NCAA basketball, you have to play at least 1 year. So you can't do what LeBron James anymore and make millions of dollars. You're forced to basically play for, just the cost of the education. And that's not, I'm okay with them not paying them, but you have to give people a choice because you say, well, look, we're not going to pay you. I don't want to go over to China and play basketball for a year. That's not a great option for me. So I hate the NCAA. I'm glad the Supreme Court ruled this. I personally don't want to see college players getting paid. But I want to give them the option to get paid if they want to go right to the pros. I just don't know that like the college thing, but I'm all for, giving them more money to actually be able to like have their college career and tutoring, housing, food, whatever that is.
Yeah, Justice Kavanaugh said in his opinion that a lot of these student athletes come from lower income, often African American areas, and sometimes they don't have the financial means to supplement their tuition with making the college experience worthwhile. And so I think it was a great thing. Going back to what you said about getting paid though, I don't know, man. I kind of think that college athletes should at least be able to benefit from sponsorship deals.
There is this idea that people do think that. I mean, you're not the only one to say that, so I mean that's certainly something there, but
you see like literally the night of the NFL draft, all of these Alabama players that I was following all of a sudden started posting Bose, Chase Sapphire, like all of these things that were sponsoring them, and they're finally able to make money even though the season hasn't started yet because they get these sponsorship deals. And so I just think about people like, I'm pretty sure Trent Richardson, when he played at Alabama, he already had a kid, and if he had been able to benefit from sponsorship deals, he would have been able to provide for his kid rather than just playing football in college, getting his college paid for, then to be able to go to the NFL. And so my heart kind of goes out to guys like that who need a little extra and they don't have time to work a job because they're practicing football all the time. I don't know. I just think that's kind of backwards a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I'm just more about the competitive aspect. I think they should have the option to pay. I mean, Trent Richardson probably could have went from high school and played, but he didn't have that option.
Sure.
So if you're not going to give them the option, maybe I agree. But it's like all the things that people care about, right? You're like, oh well, we want women's volleyball to play. We want men's baseball, girls softball. Guess what? They don't make money. So if you don't have that money going from football in there, then like those sports will cease to exist because you have to pay the players. So like if you're okay with all of that happening, fine. But it's like you're gonna have the only sports schools will have are the ones that make money, and that's gonna be football and basketball.
Right. No, I agree. I'm with you on that. I think my big beef comes from sponsorship deals. I think it should not come from the school, but I don't think they should restrict pay from outside groups doing sponsorship deals. That's my whole take on the pay issue. Anything else you want to talk about with the NCAA?
No,
Because
no, I think
I
that's
could
good.
trash them for hours and hours and hours and
Yeah.
never get tired of it. I'm sure Mark will trash them. He already has on Facebook, which leads us into our next topic. Ron, our colleague, wrote a great op-ed that ran in the Tennessean this week about the feds trying to break up Google and Facebook using antitrust laws. Wow, we're really talking about antitrust laws today for two non-attorneys. I'm pretty impressed with us.
Yeah, I know.
But talking about the feds trying to break up Facebook and Google and how it's just a really crappy idea. A lot of Tennessee small businesses, to kind of bring it home, there's a lot of small businesses in every state, of course, but in Tennessee, which is what we can speak to, a lot of businesses use Facebook, Google ads, things like that to draw new customers into their business. And if you start regulating Facebook or breaking it up and saying, here's this rule, here's this rule, here's this rule, it will crush that marketplace and could have crushing effects on small businesses. And that's really the case that Ron made in his op-ed. And I think it's a worthy case to be made, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and what's interesting is we keep hearing about, conservatives against big tech, but I mean, this bill is going to be a bill by the Democrats in the Senate. So there's these two kind of competing issues. Republicans are kind of mad. They feel like big tech censoring them. And I mean, they're right that it is.
Right.
And then Democrats feel like it's too big and is a monopoly. And the fact is that all these bills are the wrong answer. And I mean, I feel like a lot of conservatives are skeptical of big tech and they think any bill to limit them is a good thing, but it's not. And I think that Ron actually wrote this article on the same day Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows came out with the same position as Ron had. And So I mean, I don't think that anybody's going to say that they're not conservative. So this whole idea, it's like, look, we do think that it's an issue, but like these things make it worse. And really Ron I think they copied off Ron because it was a couple hours later and it was basically the same points. But so it, like, as a conservative, I don't think that if you believe in this, essentially what you're believing is more government taking over the market. You're believing in these small businesses forcing them to pay more for these services. And it's hard to say that you can support small business and support free markets and then kind of back some of these things. And the fact that, I mean, look, the Democrats are the ones who are doing this. It's not like and this is one thing that I feel like is true, not always, but a lot of times when you find a bipartisan solution to something like this, it's usually the worst case scenario. And like, I don't think we need more. It's like, I'm fine with compromise, but when you have a bipartisan thing, it's like, it's usually the worst of everything. It's usually the worst of the right and the worst of the left all together in this bill. And you're like, how is this? This is not a compromise. This is like something that everyone should hate.
This is pure trash. No, I totally agree with you. Like, absolutely. And I will say also, I was thinking about this. I think that sometimes conservatives will try to justify their position on breaking up big tech, saying like, we want more privacy, we want, whatever. Data privacy and imposing restrictions on these tech companies are two very different things, very different solutions, one of which is pretty conservative. Like, if you want to protect data and do more data privacy, like, I can get behind that. I cannot get behind regulating these platforms.
I just think people, and I think on the right specifically, need to think more about what is they know what the problem is, but the solution is not always there. I mean, like, Bernie Sanders knows what the problem is. Like, Bernie Sanders knows a lot of the right problems. He just doesn't have a solution. Instead of, opening up markets to allow, people in lower incomes to have a chance, like, they want to put more government regulation. So I think conservatives really need to think about this one and say, like, okay, I know what the problem is. Is this the solution, or is this going to make it worse? Because just because there's a problem and you say, oh, let's do this to get back, and it doesn't mean it makes things better. Yes. And things can always get worse. I hate this idea. It's like, oh, it can't get any worse. It can. It absolutely can.
I know, when we're no different. We talked about this last week about how the left tends to have no principle and just kind of goes on what sounds good in the moment. We're no different from the left when we start trying to regulate businesses just because we don't like what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's like, it's no different. There's no principle there. And sometimes I like lean back on my principles and I'm like, man, I really wish that we could sue this group for doing this thing, but that's antithetical to what I believe. So anyway, that's our 2 cents on the topic. Read the op-ed. It's incredible. It's in the Tennessean right now. It's posted
And
on
Knox News Sentinel too. They actually ran in 2 different publications today.
wow.
Yeah.
Way to go, Mark. Mark is the king of getting things placed. He just has really good relationships with people. And if we have something really, really good, he pitches it, and he's really good at that. So way to go, Mark.
It helps when you have good content to pitch.
Yeah, it helps when
if I tried to pitch jazz stuff, I don't think it would. Also, I don't know. I'm boycotting the Jazz for a week. I don't know if you noticed my hat. I'm not happy about how things went last week in our season. So I'm doing a 1 or 2 week boycott, and then I'll go back to it.
Oh my gosh, Mark is so bitter about it. He was so grumpy. I'll say this before we move on to our next topic. He was so grumpy Monday morning when we got on our staff call. I asked him if he was angry or hungover because I literally couldn't tell. It was just like lights were on, no one was home. Like there was no life behind his eyes at all. And so he was the grumpiest boy.
There's still not a lot. It's a tough. I mean, blowing a 26-point lead to end your season in a game is a tough way to end things. I will be back, but for now, I'm silently boycotting. I'm wearing Kira's Cubs hat that she got me. So
that's incredible. Mark, you wanted to talk about the filibuster. You know,
I did.
We've heard a lot about the filibuster. I guess the first time I really started hearing about pulling back the filibuster, doing away with it, was back in like 2008 with Harry Reid. I mean, it's been a long time that this debate, and I'm sure it was happening before that, but the first time I really heard about it, I guess, was then. And people have been debating for a long time. It's just like the debate with the Electoral College. If your party is not benefiting from something, you are the one that thinks it needs to go away. And so there's been efforts to do away with the Electoral College. Now there's continuing efforts to do away with the filibuster. And who was it? You said that someone said something interesting.
Yeah. Dick Durbin has he's the senator from Illinois, the greatest quote ever. In 2018, he said something about how the filibuster is absolutely essential in actually preserving our republic. That's the one thing that we need to preserve our republic. And now he's saying the exact opposite, that getting rid of the filibuster is the only thing that we can do to preserve our republic. It's like, it is so insane. Like I of course understand it's politics and there's going to be, but you can't do such a 180 in 3 years and then just like it's just, you have to at least pretend to have some kind of principles. Pretend. Like it shouldn't be that, like you can't say one thing and say the exact opposite 2 years later with nothing having changed other than one party's against democracy, which is, I mean, apparently they're saying. And it's just, it's so ridiculous. And the filibuster thing is, without the filibuster, I think things would be horrible, because I think you would have both extremes of parties putting their worst ideas into place. At least with 60 votes, you need to get some kind of, and it's hard because like you're never going to have 60 votes from the same party. So at least have to be a little bit of consensus. And you're not going to, I mean, right now, you know, if it was a literal, if there was no filibuster, who knows, Green New Deal could pass. I mean, some of the worst policies you could possibly think of, Medicare for all might be able to pass.
I know.
So and of course with the right, I mean, if you put them in charge, you know, like they might ban Facebook. I don't know. They might get rid of all social media platforms. So I'm just sick of them saying one thing and doing another. And of course you have it on both sides, but I feel like specifically the Democrats have been just awful about this recently, where like whatever they said 2 years ago it's like completely the opposite now. It doesn't matter. And it's like anybody who has any sense of just somewhat intelligence can say, this is obviously not what they believe. They will do anything to push forward their partisan principles and their party. They don't care about any of these things. They have no moral, you know, like they're talking about the filibuster being racist. Like, why did you talk about how great it was 2 years ago? Oh yeah. I mean, everything every policy that they don't like is racist. But no. I mean, they're talking about it as a racist. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's what they said. It's got a racist past, and I mean,
it's a concept.
Well, it's a racist concept. And the thing is, but it's like, that means that you supported racism 2 years ago then. Is that right? Because I mean, and it's not just him. It's like all the Democrats are like how important the filibuster is.
And
I'm just done with it.
If them's the rules that you supported it 2 years ago, then you get canceled now.
Oh yeah. It's I mean, the same thing with, which I mean, you could argue like the Supreme Court stuff. I feel like McConnell and the Democrats both flopped on that. They took the exact opposite thing when they were, and it's just, it's frustrating. And like, as an American, it's just, oh gosh, it's awful. I mean, it's really, really tough.
I think it's really funny. This has kind of stopped a little bit since we've gotten older. But when I used to say to friends that I work in politics, they would be like, oh my gosh, that's so important. And what they don't know is that like it really is at some point just like herding cats and having to deal with insane stupidity, like what we do in politics. Like these federal elected officials just flip-flopping on things. We don't know what's up, what's down, what's east, what's west. We don't know where to go. And because they're just flip-flopping their stories all the time. And so now I feel like when I say I work in politics, people are like, I'm so sorry. Because it's just a crazy fest all the time. You can't keep track of who's for what, who's against what,
No.
because there's no principle in anything.
Yeah, it's about who's the president and what party's in power. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And the filibuster thing is literally the most frustrating thing that I like, just seeing these things, because it's either a good concept or it's not. And this whole idea, and I mean, for their part, I mean, Republicans have never, I mean, good for them. They've so far have never tried to get rid of it when they've been in power. I mean, I'm not sure it's going to happen next time, which could be, 2024, 2022. Like, who knows what's going to happen, but it's just frustrating. And I can't deal with it. And just hearing Dick Durbin talk and like seeing those two clips, I'm like, you are the most full of crap person that there is.
And where did you see those clips? Because this is what I also think is interesting is
Fox News.
Exactly. So the left kind of walks the party line. Like they toe the party line, man. They don't hold anyone in their party accountable. And I think that the reason that the right phrase so much is because to a degree, there is more accountability. The libertarians and the conservatives and the establishment Republicans all kind of like aren't afraid to call each other out on things oftentimes.
But I mean, to the same point, I mean, I don't think you get as much media coming from the right that talks about, like where they have changed their opinion. I mean, I didn't say, I mean, you can say what you want, but it's like, I didn't hear a lot about President Trump's like flip-flop on abortion when he was there. Like, I didn't hear a lot about that. I think that, but of course on if you watch MSNBC, that's all they talk about is all they talk about. And like for Mitch McConnell, they talk about how the left kept talking about how he changed his opinion on Supreme Court justices. It's like, well, I didn't hear anything about how the left was on the other side. They changed their opinion just as much as he did, because they said, oh, we need to do it because like it's just, I mean, you're going to get whatever echo chamber essentially you're watching is what you're going to get. There is some decent ones who do a better job than others. I think the left has gone off I just think that they're off the reservation at this point. A lot of their news channels, where like, it's not even like I love Fox News, but at this point,
it's all we got.
They seem to be better than at least, I don't know. Well, there's just not a lot of good media. I mean, just do your own research. I mean, that's what it comes down to, but the filibuster thing is so frustrating to me. And I'm just like, I'm so disgusted by the way the Democrats are acting right now about the filibuster when they were completely the opposite side.
I agree. I totally agree. You got my 100% stamp of agreement and approval there. I'm not going to fight you on that. Let's talk about something fun. Let's talk about food. I personally am starving because Whole30 means that you can't like eat anything good. But I've lost 7 pounds in like a week and a half. So apparently something's going well.
Good work.
Following the rules really well. But you're making my mouth water. Mark can't stop talking about this bagel place. Oh. And I love bagels.
And let's be clear, this is not we're not sponsored or anything. I just tried. So I live right on the membrane. We just got a new bagel place right next door to my apartment complex called S Bagels. And it is so wonderful. It's a New York style bagel place. And we have a really good place called Proper Bagel. They have good bagels. This place is twice as good. They're everything bagels. They have like they don't have so many seeds that get stuck in your mouth. So there's less seeds, but it's so much flavor. Their sausage is great. Unfortunately, I got coffee, which was really good. I spilled it all over my hand and almost got like 2nd-degree burns, but their food was so good. They just opened. I think they're still trying to, but it's a guy from New York who's done there for a long time. There's actually a story in the Tennessee today, but I've been there twice since it opened. I'm trying to be a little bit healthier, which is hard with this place next door, but it is, it's unreal good. And it's one of those things that we talked about this. We'll talk about this. Like, there is certain foods that you can get from one part of the country that is awful everywhere else. And that's why this is so special, because when you go to New York, you go to New Jersey, Philadelphia, you get good bagels. Great bagels in New York, but really nowhere else in the country. And this is the first one in Nashville, anywhere outside of kind of the Northeast, that I've had an excellent bagel.
Don't they say that it's the water in New York that makes like the crust and the bagel bread so good?
It might be, but whatever it is, they figured it out here. He took whatever their thing is, and it is so unbelievable. And like when we were talking about this, like the other, like when you talk about cheesesteaks or things like that, like outside of Philadelphia, New Jersey, you can't get anything good. And what are your examples of that?
What's your Philadelphia cheesesteak?
Oh, I mean, there's how many? I mean, Jim's is my favorite.
I was about to say
Yeah,
Jim's.
Tony Luke's is really good. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones, obviously. The White House in Atlantic City, New Jersey is also an underrated place.
Really? I've never been.
They have such unbelievable sandwiches, and I hate saying anything good comes from New Jersey, but the White House cheesesteaks, just all their sandwiches are so good. The bread's perfect. They get it fresh like 3 different times a day. They have a bakery come deliver fresh bread.
Oh, I love that. I think for me, people will say Texas style barbecue. And I know I'm an Alabama girl and I should like the Alabama style barbecue. And I do love the white sauce.
Yeah.
But there's just something about Texas barbecue, man. It's just so much better. And I don't know if it's that there is.
Now, is there a certain type? Because I mean, I would like the brisket is what I think of. Is that what you like?
Yes, that's
okay. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And like the way they do their sauces in Texas, like I just think that the barbecue there is incredible. I also think that New York pizza is so much better than Chicago or anywhere else. And Ron's going to kill us for saying this, but Chicago.
Me too. I'm on board with that completely.
Chicago pizza is soup in a bread bowl. Like it's just not great.
I'm not going that far. I still like, and I want to be clear though. Chicago style pizza, people always talk about it. It's not just deep dish. They have a lot of good thin crust too. Like I think that there's like, it's a tourist thing to say it's just deep dish. With that being said, deep dish is not as good as New York style pizza. Anything they have in Chicago is not as good as New York style pizza. So I'm on board with that.
No, I want like a big floppy slice of pizza. Like that's
like greasy. I know. I want the grease to be rolling off into my mouth.
Greasy. I want to feel disgusting after I eat it. Like if
absolutely. If you feel anything but disgusting, you didn't do it right.
Yeah, exactly. I also, and this is a really hot take, and people are not gonna like this. But the street style authentic Mexican tacos, I want like Tex-Mex. I like ground beef and cheese and sour. Like I grew up on Tex-Mex, and I'm just a Tex-Mex kind of.
And really, the only good Tex-Mex you can get is really kind of Texas and California, like San Diego, like area, right? Like there's not a lot, maybe New Mexico. It seems like that's on that same.
Maybe, but in Texas.
But yeah, and the thing is, Mexican food, in other places is good, but you're right. Like when you go there, like I went to San Diego, and like my 4 favorite Mexican meals have been there. And then I went to Dallas. I'm like, that's a great Mexican meal. Like I go everywhere else, like this is good for like that's what it's like. It's for Nashville, or it's good for Philadelphia. It's good for Milwaukee. Like it's not. It's good for that, but it's not anything compared to the really good stuff.
Like I respect the hustle of trying to make Mexican food like authentic or whatever. And I do love going down Nolensville and stopping at Don Juan's, which is just like a taco stand. Like it's great. Yeah. It's good. But if I'm going to pick a meal to absolutely make myself sick eating so much of it, it's going to be Tex-Mex. I'm sorry. Sure. That's what I go to.
H&S Bagels are good for New York. So forget it for Nashville. They are good for New York. Like they are so good. And like you need, I don't know if it's on any delivery out there. I know you're a little bit farther, but you need to, as soon as you're done with your little Whole30 thing, then the first meal you should have should be this because it is so good.
You're gonna make me cheat before Whole30's even over.
You should. It's worth it. I hate living so close to it. It's like it's frustrating because I'm like I want it like 3 times a day. I'm like I can't. I gotta try to lose some weight for the wedding. So it's not great to have that right as close to possible as you.
Hustling for the shredding for the wedding.
Yeah, that's right.
As we say in Alabama. Well, I'm going to New York for Halloween this year, and all of my healthy habits will get blown out of the water for that because that I'm gonna go to Murray's and get a locked bagel every single.
And most importantly, Bill de Blasio will only be in power for a few more months, so that'll be exciting. I'm sure the city will be ecstatic to get rid of him.
The Lord, that is the best news, good news of the week. Yes. Blasio, bye. Yeah. Well, Mark, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you guys next week.